Alright, so welcome back into another Dragon Ball Super card game video, and today we're going to go through set 13, Kai of Time, with her huge variety of deck lists and choices and card choices that you might have. And by the way, of course, you can follow me on Twitch. I will put the link in my hands or right by my hands on the screen here. Follow us on Facebook as well to keep up with all of the Stage 0 content and any of the set 13 product that you want to buy, or any of the singles. Really doesn't matter. You can use the TCG player link in the description below. Hopefully you have joined the Discord as well for all the discussions, rulings, and hopefully tournaments in the future while I get those organized as well. All right, let's get right into it. So of course, this is the Kai of Time. The first thing that I will go over is the leader. And of course, if you haven't seen these before, this is the complete breakdown where I go through all of the stuff for the leader and the archetype, etc, etc. I already did one for set 13 King Vegeta, and as well as set 13 Bardock, two of my favorite ones. And of course, this one's next. And then the one after this one should be Android 17 and 18. But if you have any ideas for set 13 or any of the deck profiles, explanations, anything, let me know in the comments below. So the Kai of Time, so she's pretty simple on the front side, but has a really good awakening effect. It is a little bit finicky sometimes. However, she has a burst 3, so you mill the top 3 of your deck and then you draw 1 card. So as you are unawakened, you're going to be milling 4, which is pretty much why it's good to have over 50 cards or 51 cards. And in that 55 range is what I've been playing as well. But if your life is at 4 or less, or if you have 8 cards in your warp or more, you can draw 2 cards and flip it over and have or take cards in your life until you have 6. Basically, this is the ongoing trend that set 13 has in an alternative awakening. You can awaken pretty much turn 2. I don't think you can really do turn 1 unless you have the right cards like Time Regulator, the IAR, and other stuff, if I had to take a guess. But generally turn 2, turn 3 is around the time that you do want to awaken. Being on the front side longer doesn't really give you any value. It's really when the backside comes in. And we'll talk about how to awaken and the best ways to do that. But the awaken effect is that auto once per turn, when you play a card with Overwhelm, you draw and then you place up to 3 black cards from your warp into your drop area. They have to be battle cards, which is kind of annoying because you do play some extra cards, some unisons, etc, right? But in general, it has really helped in order to get the wormhole effect from the unison, and as well as the activate main, the second one, and basically maximize the effect. The activate main is that you pay 1 black, has to be black, choose 1 card in your hand, discard it, and if you don't have a unison, play with the 9k power and no specified cost, a black one, you can use it from your warp or your drop with a marker on it. So this is going to be the Demigra unison that we play, which is really detrimental to the deck. It's pretty important to do all the plays and as well as get the max value of all the Overwhelm cards that you have. Plus, not only this helps your drop for that 1 extra card, but it also helps the wormhole effect that you get out of it. But the auto gets more cards from your warp into your drop. This gets more cards with 1 of them, and including the burst effect from your unison. And then the activate main is that you place 1 card from your life in your drop area, crit 1, and you place up to 2 battle cards from your warp in your drop. And then the cards that you play with Overwhelm aren't sent to warp at the end of the turn. So, a few things about this. There are cards specifically that we're going to go over in the next couple sections here that really help with this, that stay on the board, and as well as gain the value for Overwhelm just being on the board when they're not supposed to. The other couple things is that things that have permanent double strike, critical, dual attack, things like that, that usually have Overwhelm or are very, very cheap, are now 25k beaters, 30k beaters, 15k dual attackers, 15k double strikers, 30k double strikers, right? So this is a really strong effect, and it's going to be really long lasting as more sets come out with more Overwhelm options. And I think set 13 really does help this archetype in general and this leader in general. The other thing about it is that in total, when you overwhelm something and you also have this effect, you're looking at 1 card from your crit to life, 3 cards, which is 4 from your warp to drop after you overwhelm, and then 2 black battle cards from your warp to your drop. So you're looking at least 6 or 7 cards just from there. And that's why you see a lot of 6 drops in this deck, and as well as just the deck that I'm going to be looking at in a second. But the engine that I play is going to be the 30k beaters, and as well as the Super Saiyan 3 Gogeta. Oh man, I really love the card, and we'll go over that in a second. From left to right, we have the Super Saiyan 4 Vegeta. He has critical, you pay 1, you overrun for 6, and then when he swings, you get to warp up to a 4 cost. So you can have 4 battle cards, 1 cost, you get to warp all of them. You get to warp tokens since it is add up to a cost, and as well as just good 4 cost removal if that's the case. Oh, one more thing I didn't go over. I will put the ruling here on my face, hopefully when I'm editing, maybe not on my face, but on the leader here in the middle of the Toki ruling. I don't think there is a ruling for this just yet, but when you overwhelm and then use this effect afterwards, I do believe that the overwhelm cards stay, and this is based on the Toki ruling. So if anybody ever has any questions, I would reference that until a Q&A or something has been answered by Bandai or a judge at the time. That's the only thing I can think of. Anyway, so we have the Vegeta that removes and has critical for 1 cost. We also have a 1 cost Goku. When he attacks, he draws 1, and then you get to untap him at the end of the turn with a 30k blocker, which is just nuts. And then we have the TP Super Saiyan 4 Vegeta that you overrun for 6 for free, and then you get to warp 1 out their hand. They have to choose 1. But where it really comes out and really comes together is the Super Saiyan 3 Gogeta. And the only downside of this card is that he has unique, because if he didn't have unique, because he has double strike 25k, overwhelm for 6 and 1 energy, and union fusion for 1 energy, basically what happens is that you have all of these Goku and Vegeta 30ks, which they all have to be the same power for union fusion. I learned that the hard way. And you can use the cards out of warp from your for your union effect, and then place them to the drop for overwhelm later. Not only that, this opens up for an additional non-overwhelm battle card, but it also a cheap 25k that removes 1, because this auto says when you swing, you get to warp 1 of their battle cards, which is just nuts. This thing has everything, and I really hate to hype a card up like this again, but I've said it about 2-drop Piccolo. I've said it about the 3-drop Piccolo out of the drop box. I said it about a number of the cards when I did like the top 10s and stuff like that. This is a card that I think is going to see some play in a lot of black decks. And if it doesn't, then I'm okay with that, because it's going to be cheap and I get to pick up all of them. But really good card overall. It has a really good utility. And when you combine all the cards that it is supporting with, or it has support for, it's just overall really good. Anyway, moving on, we'll come back to that and the combos when we get to the actual deck. We have the engine, the other part of the engine where you can play the Sun Goten thwarting the Dark Empire. If you notice, all of the supporting cards have thwarting the Dark Empire, the Vegeta, the Goku, and the Gogeta, and as well as the Goten and Trunks. You can probably get a pretty good build going just by doing that. On the left, I'm kind of blocking it here, but it has Overwhelm 2, critical, and if your leader is a Kai of Time, when you play with Overwhelm, you get to draw up to 2 cards from the top of your deck into your warp, and then draw 1. So you can say 0 and then draw 1 and just have a 10k critical boy, if you just have 2 Overwhelm, which is just cheap in general. Or you can just say no and then draw 1. The other guy over here, Trunks, is the one I play because he does have double strike. It's a little bit more useful against unisons, and as well as just stealing game for a just random 2-cost double striker. You can also play it for 2, but you just won't get the effects for Overwhelm. You just still have the double strike and critical. Anyway, still the same effects, and it helps for the awakening. That's the whole point of it. You mill 3, you draw 1, you can put 1 in the drop, you mill 2 out from the top of your deck into your warp, and then you draw 1. And then this guy, I believe that is 4, 2, 1. So you need 1 extra card, basically. And that's where the Black IR kind of comes in. I've recently put this in the deck. It's the last minute addition after playing on stream, and I think it's the right move. Not only to have the free draw, but also having a cheap overwhelm. I think that's where you kind of get out of hand, and where I got out of hand for the list. As you start building, start putting some cheap overwhelm, so that way you have more options and not force yourself to get to the 6 or whatever you have as far as the requirement for overwhelm. Now we have the 6-drop Go-Tense. He has dual attack, overwhelm for 2, for 6, 2 energy, 6 cards in drop. And then a Xeno Evolve for Black Go-Tense for energy cost of 3, which I don't really remember what that is. I think it's a new card. And I think it's also an older card that is supported by the Gogeta leader, I want to say. But auto, when this card is removed from battle area by the opponent's skill, which obviously you either use the leader effect for the dual attacking 25k, or you can just Xeno Evolve. You can play up to 1 Goten, and as well as Trunks, synergy cost of 3 or less from overwhelm skill from your drop area or your warp. And this is nice, but don't really play, like, these 2 cards aren't really the 3 or less here. There are other targets for it, but it is an option that you can play basically. And activate battle, which is nice because it doesn't have once per turn. You can play as much as black as you want, get 10k and double strike for the battle. It's kind of a bummer that it is not for the turn, because you're paying a lot of energy just to play it, and then you already kind of know what I'm saying. Wait, the rest of the engine, it really becomes pretty important. I'm blocking the Demigod unison here, but once per turn bursts when you play when you lead a card as a black only Saiyan or a god only Saiyan. When you play a battle card with Overwhelm, it gains Wormhole, which means you can play Overwhelm twice, Dark Overwhelm twice, which in this case is just Overwhelm and then Dark Overwhelm, or yeah, that's it actually. But generally that's what it is. You have the combination of both. Either way, activate main, place up to 2 black auto cards from your warp in your drop area, and then activate main -3, you add up to 2 battle cards with energy cost of 7 or less and overwhelm skill from warp or to your hand, which is basically your whole entire deck. Like, most of your deck is going to be that. Unfortunately, you can't get the SCR out of it. Is what it is. It's 7 costs, and as well it has overwhelm, but whatever. But this is really cool because not only that you burst one, you get to use leader effect when you do awaken. You get to overwhelm, let's say turn 2, turn 3, which we'll talk about in a little bit. It basically becomes a mathematical thing. You burst one for the overwhelm, you place 2 more cards from your warp and your drop, there's 3, and then for the leader effect you get 3 more, or up to 4 basically, depending on what effects you have. And there's your 6 or 7, depending on what overwhelm that you want to use in general. So that's kind of where you want to kind of think of for this card. Wormhole is just busted. It's just a no cost, 1 cost basically unison, and it gets to recur pretty much any time. I don't think there's any cards that remove from play for unison, so you'll always have this on awaken side. So really good. And the Supreme Kind of Time Labyrinth Unleashed. I really like this card. There are very specific things that really help with this. 2 things that come out is basically, okay, well, first you negate the attack and play the card. So there's a 5k, 0 cost 5k combo card, right? And if you or your opponent has 3 or more cards in your warp, you reduce this cost in your hand by 2. So it's a 1-drop negate. And then you're always going to have the cards in warp, so it's not going to be a big of an issue. But your leader card is black. When this card is played using its counter attack skill, you choose up to 1 of your opponent's battle cards and send them to the warp. At the end of the turn, you play the cards you sent to warp with the skills negated for the turn. So the cool thing about this card is that it's basically stopping 2 attacks. That's the first thing that should come out of your head, where you negate the leader attack, and then you warp something that doesn't have barrier on their field, and then now they can't swing with that. Also, they can't get value out of it, as in double strike, dual attack, critical, draw a card, activate main effects, whatever it may be. It sucks that it has to choose, but if it didn't, well, or ignore barrier, then I mean, that would be really kind of busted, honestly. But either way, the other thing is that this is really good for interrupting chains. So let's say there's a 4-drop Sin Shenron, so now they can evolve on top of it if they just swing with something else. Let's say it's the Janemba chain. Shout out to Frisco for beating my ass with that Janemba deck. Really, really good deck. The Soul Striker Janemba. And you use this and you warp 3 costs or the vanilla, and now they have to reestablish a chain, and now they have to wait until they come back at the end of the turn or the next turn, basically. So this is really, really good. It's really understandable why they put this in the SPR slot. And honestly, it's probably going to be another money card for black decks in particular, but you can play this in any deck because of the permanent, but you just don't get the warp effect. So I guess 1 cost negate. I don't know. Either way. And then now the last one is the SCR. Originally I was playing the Kai, the regular everybody wants Kai, the one I'm trying to pull in this, which hopefully I don't forget to open up another pack. But this one has really come out and just really been really good, honestly. Like, man, the ultimate says is the double strike 40k. You have 8 cards in your drop that are all black. For Dark Overwhelm, you pay 2, and then when it gets removed, just like Hashiak, it gets removed from the game. And then the auto is you have 4 more energy when this card is played using Dark Overwhelm. You play 2 battle cards and different card names. Energy cost is 6 or less, and Overwhelm in the skill and the warp. So things like the 5-drop Demigod that has the Overwhelm skill that you can go ahead and swing and warp a card. Things like the 6-cost cards that we're talking about here that's critical, and when it attacks you draw a card or warp stuff. You know, it's really, really good. And there's other stuff. Obviously, you can play the Super Saiyan 3 Gotenks if they KO it, or if they warp it, or if you warp it, things like that. And it's just really, really good as a turn 4, and you're only paying 2 energy. Having 2 more energy up afterwards is really good. The only downside of this is that it doesn't have deflect, so they kind of have to, you know, they have to kind of get around, or you have to kind of get around that, or play around that. But it is what it is. But the other thing about this is that you choose 1 battle card in your battle area, will Overwhelm skill, and you place it in owner's drop area, which fills your Overwhelm, obviously. And then when your opponent, one of your opponent cards attack, not just battle cards. This is one thing I thought that I forgot about. But when opponent cards attacks, you negate the attack. So as long as this thing is on the field, which it is because of Dark Overwhelm, you play out the Overwhelm cards, which you have 2 negates right then and there, and then you have the leader effect, in which it makes the Overwhelm card stay. And the gameplay that I probably will be putting up on the stream versus Mario, I kind of showcased the SCR for the first time since it was a last minute change for me, and I wanted to try it out, and it's really good when it works. You know, that's the only thing I can really think of or really say. And if you tap out, which I did, or if you kind of overextend, the auto really does come in clutch, because you're probably going to be playing 2 Overwhelm cards with this guy or this girl, and then Overwhelm with your leader effect, and then Super Saiyan 3 Gotenks right after that, and now you have 4 negates right then and there, unless they clear your board, which is really annoying. Now let's talk about the support. We have a lot of support from Food of Dark Banisher, which, you know, you use leader effects, you pay for, and now you have a triple striker or triple attacker that stays on the board on your turn and their turn. They have to warp 1 for any of the skills. This is easily removed, and as well as easily countered, which is why I only play it at 1 in the list. I don't really like taking the chance of paying 4 and hoping they don't have a negate, and black doesn't really have an answer for it. So it is what it is. It's just a thought. Gravy is really good to fill your drop area. We just play that. It's just really good in just general. 30k double striking Super Saiyan 3 Bardock here. I like it, but paying 4 without deflect, again, without barrier, without anything that really protects it. The life at 1 switch to active mode is nice, and then you get to add a card to your life if they negate. You basically can counter it. I don't really like it. If someone plays it and they make it work, that's cool. I don't really think it deserves an SR slot at this time in the meta. Unrelenting Assault Trunks is cool if you use the 2-drop cards that warp things from your drop into your deck into your warp. Just a thought, and you get to play it for free. And the Time Patrol Sun Goten, and as well as the Fusion Renewed Sun Goten, both are pretty interesting cards. I think they probably help a little bit with other archetypes like the Trunks or the Goten stuff. The 2-drop here, and as well as the 2-drop Fusion Renewed Trunks, are pretty good. The issue with these two, well, I don't think really, there's not really an issue with the Goten. It's just depending on what your build looks like and what it supports. The 2-drop Fusion Renewed, you just have to pay 2. If you have an Overwhelm card on the field, you get to pay 2, and it has a blocker basically and a counterplay. It's just annoying that you have to pay 2, and you also have to pay 1 more for the auto. But what you could do is just pay 2 and then pass the turn, and then have 1 up for revenge. I guess that's the only thing I could think of, but it's only for the turn, so maybe not. Either way, Super Saiyan 4 Bardock fighting against Fate. You just have a dual attacker for 6. I mean, it's one of the cheaper, most aggressive cards out there. It's a dual attacker after you use the leader effect for the turn. You play Champa as well, so now it's a 35k dual attacker. I talked about this a long time ago, and it just became popular pretty recently because of the aggro decks and the aggro format that we're in right now. But it's just overall really good. Kaya time is really good, but I like to draw 2, and you're going to be at 4 or less regardless. So I like the draw 2 new super combos. But Kaya time is not too bad. Scientist Fu with double strike, and as well as draw you 2 cards for 1. Because he's a 10k, I don't really like him. I don't really put him in the list anymore. The mirror is probably a little bit better because you get to untap 2 or untap 1 and draw 1, and it's a 0/5. So it just kind of got phased out there. But Scientist Fu is still pretty good. Shout out to David Fujimara. Super Kamehameha, again, your life is going to be pretty low, so it just makes sense to have that as a counter play. Since this card or this deck doesn't really play any, I don't think black really plays too many anyway. King Vegeta's Kingdom Lost is nice in the mirror. It's pretty interesting to play that. It has barrier, and you get to make them warp cards. A 19k is pretty awkward as far as comboing goes, and overall pretty cool card. I just don't really like it since they have to have cards in the warp. Revive Ravager Vegeta. So this is kind of like a executive decision of what you want to play. Either you want to play and mill and maybe double up Revive Ravager Vegeta, or you can see 4 cards with time regulated Trunks, right? That's my thing. I like to see cards, and you're going to be getting stuff into your drop no matter what with the leader effect as well as the unison. So I'd rather just go ahead and just do that and not put too much as far as RNG into it. Same thing for the Kai of Time that looks at the top 3 for a battle card. That's also a really good card. I just like to go ahead and filter out whatever I can, and it helps with the Goten's Union Fusion, because you get to pitch something into the warp, then you can choose a Union Fusion target. Max Power Kamehameha is really good for the leader, since you can go ahead and recur it and just use the activate main whenever you can after you negate. The Sun Goku Adventure Begins that I'm blocking here, and as well as the Trunks Changing History. If you look at my Xeno Goku Vanilla 30k beater deck, which I still love. I love that deck. I have no idea why people aren't trying it more often, but whatever. If you use the 4 stars with the vanillas and just overwhelm over and over again, basically, I mean, that's just the whole concept. You have the 30ks that we're playing already that usually are free, and then you also have the vanilla 30ks that are guaranteed to stay unless they remove it, so it's pretty cool. Sun Gohan, the Super Saiyan 4 one, Beyond the Ultimate. The Unison's okay. I've always had kind of a love-hate relationship with this guy. It's just an alternative to your Demigod Unison, but I think the Wormhole is going to be the best bet for this leader. Time Regulated Vegeta, he's really good. Just paying 2 and being easily removed is just not good, so I wouldn't recommend it. His effect is also once per turn, so even if you had 2 of them, if you overwhelm once, you only get the effect once anyway. Or once per card. Super Saiyan 3 Tag Team Gohan is kind of redundant, because if you want stuff on the field, I don't think it's really going to be that good, but it is a card that people will mention when you talk about black. It is just something that people will say, why aren't you running Tag Team Gohan? Well, I think it's kind of counterproductive if you want stuff on the field. But the stuff that doesn't stay, like the early Trunks and the early 3 costs and 2 costs that you pay for overwhelm, those are going to be pretty cool. And it gives you an added level of defense, which I think this deck needs, and just black in general needs. Speaking of Super Saiyan Bardock, the Tenacious, I don't play it, but it is an option for it. I already have a lot of stuff that you have to pay 1 and get to 6, so I don't want to add more stuff to that. This is a great card if you want to have a little bit more mid-range and a little bit more of a option to play a little bit longer. And then Koitsukai is just really good. You're going to be milling a lot of cards, and you get to return stuff into your drop. So if you do mill it, overwhelm, you can return it and then remove it from game to use the effect. And it helps a lot against a lot of red decks and stuff that I've talked about before. Now, let's talk about the list that I personally have. I'm going to go ahead and turn off my face here so you can look at everything. So the first thing here is all the stuff that I've been talking about, right? And the stuff that you might see in any overwhelm deck, from Secret Identity to remove tokens and just removal. You're going to have the 6 in the drop to do that. Mana in the mission is great. It is reduced now because it has to have the same level of power for Union Fusion, so I don't really dig it because of that. Otherwise, it's a great card and it's a good target for the SCR and as well as the Super Saiyan 4 Goku we play at the bottom here too, because you can just pick that up, return stuff, repick that up again, and now you have 2 free overwhelms, 30k bodies, or 30k body and a 20k double strike critical. So is what it is. We use the super combo because, again, you're going to be at 4 or less life most of the time. We have 4 of the demigod because you already know how important those are. 3 of each for these guys. I think if I had to change something right now, is probably to give 1 or 2 more targets for Super Saiyan 4 Vegeta. You mill and filter through the deck so much. I believe 3 is okay, but if you wanted to add 1 or 2 more, I would not lock you for it. I ran the TP Vegeta, and I'm kind of leaning towards less TPs because I know how hard it is and how difficult it is to attain right now. Trunks, 3 of them, and then 4 of the time regulator. Both of them help quite a lot to draw and to have cheap overwhelm, which is important. I can't express how important it is to have cheap overwhelm just in general. But it is what it is for those. I kind of already talked about Kai, the counter, and as well as the SDR earlier. Just rewind it if you skipped it. Gravy is really good just to get more stuff into the drop. Dark Power at 2 for power burst to have a target. Same thing for changing history. Before this, before I added 2 of each, which both of these, and I think in this format, are pretty important to get back in as well as to play. I didn't really have any targets. So if you're going to be playing power burst, I would say to have targets, and these guys are great targets to go against blue, go against red, go against anything that plays stuff for free, etc. And then we have the black IER. This is really good to awaken turn 2, which is kind of what you want to do. Not only to filter your drop to play a 6 drop on turn 2, but also to awaken and then use your leader effect and then overwhelm again if you have the unison, which generally you're going to want to play that turn 1 anyway. And then Mirror Assault from the Skies, kind of already talked about that. It's better than Silence's Fu. A 1-of is really nice for another double striker that untaps itself and draws. And then it can just be a 30k double striker for the rest of the game. 2 of the Demigra, I think 3 is okay, but 2 is great. It's the thing about getting around the Dark Overwhelm. You're going to want to use Dark Overwhelm almost every time. If you don't, then that's okay. You can just use Leader Effect instead. But overall, pretty damn good card. It's expensive now and I regret selling them, is what it is. And then we also have the TP Super Saiyan 4 Goku that I mentioned earlier. This guy basically gets everything as far as your overwhelm, which you overwhelm, you get one, and then you use the leader effect to recur from your warp and you drop, and then you lose the wormhole afterwards. And also it gets your Kai of Time counter attack. So I really like that about the card. Brainwash No More is just great because you're playing a black deck, so you might as well. And then we also have 3 of the Gogeta. Already talked about how good he is, just really good. And then Hidden Power Supreme Kai. If you have any changes, any suggestions, definitely let me know in the comments. Okay, now let's talk about mulligan and turns. So mulligan, obviously you want the unison to play turn 1. You want a cheap overwhelm like time regulator or the other trunks as well that we have listed here. You want to have Dark Power in case you're playing against something that's free and they're going to be playing stuff for free pretty soon. And then we also have the black IER, where again you get to basically have 5 into your drop after leader swing, and then overwhelm you basically have 8 right in there. So it's pretty important that you have this guy, not only so you can go for game for a 50k 1 cost, but also to warp something out of their drop. So there you go. Also, turn 1, the stuff that I just mentioned, pretty much all the stuff that I just mentioned. Turn 2, you want to play a 6 drop or a Demigrun, depending on if they play something on their field or whatever it may be. The cool thing about this is that basically if you use the time regulator and as well as the thwarting the Dark Empire correctly, you get to have the Vegetas and the Gokus into the warp. And then what you want to do is overwhelm 6 for the for any of your overwhelm for free, and then pay 1 for the Gogeta Union Fusion afterwards from your warp, and then go ahead and just have 1 up for a negate or up for a black IER. So depending on what you have in your hand, you just want to have those up. Otherwise you can just tap out and then just not play something with overwhelm because the Demigrun needs overwhelm. That's where it kind of gets a little awkward. But if you awaken and then use overwhelm instead for Demigrun, then you can just go ahead and keep it on there and then overwhelm again. You have turn 3 where you're playing out the criticals. You can play on turn 2 as well, but you know, it's just more efficient to play more things instead and just establish these beaters, these 30k and 25k beaters. But these guys are great for removal and as well as for protection and draw 1. And then you can't really play the SCR on turn 3, but you do wait until turn 4. If you have it in your hand, I highly recommend to play it on turn 4. All right, that's it. I talked about for a half hour. Hopefully I have the timestamps in the description below. And that's it. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and I will see you in the next one.